on CSR. But today, it's become seamless. It's a part of our DNA, as I explained to you earlier on. So once we have that as our philosophy or our policy or our concept, then it's very easy to put the KPIs into each business. There are some businesses that use a lot of water, and I'm just addressing one aspect of sustainability, that is looking after the nature's resources. There's water, electricity, etc. Then there are the employee-motivated sustainability indicators. Profit itself is a sustainability indicator. The EVA, the tax that you pay to the government, the payments you make to your suppliers, the work that you do with your ginger farmer, your vanilla farmer, your cashew nut farmer, in making them earn a livelihood by supplying you with their products. And it's a bit of a domino as to where you start and where you end. I don't think it will ever stop. It has to continue. And the more times the cycle revolves, the better it will be for both the supplier as well as the customer as well as for ourselves. So that's how we build the KPIs into every CEO's performance objective. And as I mentioned, these are all linked to remuneration, reward, chairman's award, and various other recognition features. And it now has become a part of the DNA. Thanks.
Thank you, Ronnie. There are two questions to Dr. Hans. One is, did you curtail the cost on sustainability during the difficult time 2009, 2010?
No, and in fact, if you look at our annual reports, those were probably the 2 years in which our sustainability and corporate accountability investments really picked up on a linear trajectory. But there was no curtailing of any of our investments in this area.
Yeah, the next one is on, I was also interested in asking you this, about the e-waste aspect of your product. That's the question also, how to make the customer aware of it, and what methodologies may be available to mitigate those.
I think that's a very important point and a very good question, because with something like 16 million people today having a phone, sometimes more than one phone, and also swapping these phones very, very often, M-waste or e-waste arising from the mobile industry is pretty significant. We started this initiative of M-waste collection, I think 4 or 5 years ago, and we have currently shipped I think 5 large shipments out to the disposal plants in China. That has now been adopted by the larger industry, which is good. However, some challenges with respect to collection. We have kept our customers informed through periodic communication. All our service centers have M-waste drop boxes and so on. But what we have found in Sri Lanka, and I think it is common to most developing markets, is that the recycling industry, local recycling industry, not environmental recycling, but refurbishment industry is very strong, it's lucrative. So on one hand, it helps poorer people to obtain mobile phones, which is goodness on one side. On the other side, it results in substandard equipment being rejuvenated, parts and components of them being thrown in a less than responsible manner. And from a green perspective, there is some challenge. So we've tracked consumer behavior. Typically, what a consumer does, I'm talking of average middle of the pyramid consumer. When their phone stops working, they go to the phone shop. When they go to the phone shop, the guy behind the counter will play with it a little bit and probably would say this phone is now beyond repair, or we don't have parts for this, or the battery cannot be replaced because the battery is out of stock. Look, you give me this and I'll give you a 2,000 rupee discount on the next model. And that transaction takes place, could be at Liberty Plaza, Majestic City, Thalewatugoda, Maharagama, Jaffna, Trincomalee. And all these phones go behind the counter. Then they get repaired in some shape or form and get thrown back into the market at 500 rupees or 1,000 rupees. So there's a plus and a minus. It's something we're trying to grapple with. But from our end, we are certainly very committed to move M-waste at our cost. We do it completely at our cost. We have many shipments, like I mentioned, going out per year. We collect and send them for disposal.
Okay. Rohan, you have two questions. If you can, one. Okay, you can read it and
Okay. Question says, as chairman of the UN Global Compact Local Network in Sri Lanka, could you clarify its role in Sri Lanka? Well, basically, the UN Global Compact Local Network was set up last year, and our main focus is to fulfill and develop the 10 UN Global Compact principles amongst the corporate world in Sri Lanka. That is the focus on human rights at the workplace, good labor practices, focus on the environment, and anti-corruption. So the focus of the United Nations Global Compact Local Network is, whilst focusing and upholding these principles amongst the business community in Sri Lanka, also sharing corporate sustainability practices and promoting corporate sustainability as a point of differentiation in the corporate world. We have all the big names in Sri Lanka as signatories, approximately 40 signatories, and with all the subsidiary companies, we have approximately 400 companies that are in the local network. Some of the things we do is almost every other month we have an initiative called the Sustainability Knowledge Hub, where we have invited very eminent speakers who come and share their experiences and best practices on sustainability. And incidentally, 2 months ago we had Mr. Shonu Shivdasani, who is the founder of the Six Senses and Soneva brand, who came and made a brilliant presentation on sustainable tourism and this Six Senses story, which was really I would say a thought-provoking presentation for Sri Lanka tourism. The other thing that we do is we share best practices between the different companies. For instance, here, one of the things we find is that since we set up the local network, many of the smaller companies who are still not aware of the benefits of corporate sustainability, being interested. And since we have many of the large companies on the Global Compact local network board, what we do is we use the larger companies and the experienced specialists to integrate with some of the smaller companies and make presentations, make them aware of what sustainability is, that it is something that we need to integrate into the DNA of business, and the importance of reducing carbon emission and so on and so forth. So I'm sure there is a lot of potential for us to develop sustainability as a strategy, whilst at the same time working on the 10 global principles. And these are some of the things that we are doing. And in fact, one of the things I like to say at this forum is that we like more and more companies to be a part of the local network, so that Sri Lanka as a local network develops and promotes social corporate sustainability as a business strategy in Sri Lanka.
Thank you, Rohan. There is another question to Subodh.
Yeah, the question is, IOC as a Navratna company has a great opportunity to diversify into renewable energy and biomass gasifier from Sri Lankan perspective. Well, first of all, I would like to tell that IOC has now graduated from Navaratna to Maharatna, and that is the biggest that one can have in India. There are only few, 5, 6 companies in India which have got this Maharatna status. The question is very apt. In fact, I must tell you that in India we have already started a whole new department. It has been set up 4, 5 years back, so I wouldn't call it new, in which renewable work is already on renewable energy as well as on the biodiesel. In fact, there are Jatrupa plants and all being put up. We are cultivating Jatrupa to get this biodiesel out of it. This is still in the experimental stages. As regards renewable energy, solarization, we have taken some steps in that. The petrol sheds have been solarized at some places. Most of the petrol sheds being run by the franchisee themselves, initial investments being very, very high. We have even been giving them subsidies and all. We have been encouraging them to go for the solar systems, for energizing their dispensing units, that is, as well as their lighting loads, etc., so that they can minimize the electricity and again which can be useful for the environment.
One more
That's
question.
like-
Why you don't sell kerosene as well?
If you want to answer, you can answer that.
Why don't you sell kerosene?
I would not like to answer this question. Why I don't sell kerosene in Sri Lanka right now, I would not be able to answer this question. But if somebody has really been very interested, is most welcome to my office. We can have a discussion over there.
Okay. I think there are 2 more questions. Mr. Vatawala, can we... Sorry? Right, okay. Ravi, can you take that?
Yes. Actually, the question is, can you think about the sustainability when a bank is having a high NPA ratio? Well, I think NPA ratio would be helped if a bank thinks about sustainability. Well, it would not be the other way around. So I would think that it's part and parcel of the credit evaluation and also risk management to think about sustainability first. So I think that answers that. The other one is sustainability without credit lines. Can that happen? Yes, what I meant was there are no overseas credit lines, but there are so many credit lines by several banks. And also it's the normal day-to-day lending also should be done with sustainability in mind. So to that extent, even if there are no special credit lines, the banking industry is focused on sustainability. Thanks.
Yeah, this is actually a suggestion with regard to telecom operators or mobile operators working with Sri Lanka Tourism to disseminate information to tourists on environment protection and so on. I think it's a good idea. I'll certainly take that up for discussion. Just a point regarding SMS, delivering SMS to tourists. There is a pushback as well from visitors that too many messages arrive on your phone. So within that solicited message paradigm, where you deliver only a reasonable amount of information on an unsolicited basis, but somebody who is interested in a topic can then register and receive as much as they would like to. But I think it's a good suggestion, we can take it forward.
Yeah, one last question from, is Aditi Helder here? She's gone? Yes, this is to all panelists. I think Rohan said he would take this. How do you take a decision in your business? Do you listen to your sustainability officer or your financial officer? Or is done in a joint manner? Is there a trade-off? Can you give examples, please, Aditi? As you know, Aditi is the GRI focal point in India.
Yeah, I would imagine that we wouldn't listen to the sustainability officer alone or the financial officer. Usually, you would sort of, the most important facet to my mind in the business are your customers and also maybe your shareholders. And they would probably influence your decisions. Say, for instance, I'm sure it's the same in every company of my colleagues seated here. For instance, today at Atkins Spence, we focus on energy. We focus on water conservation. We focus on conversion of waste or reducing waste. So these are all business decisions, not necessarily because your sustainability officer wants it, but because these are decisions we need to take to be competitive. For instance, we focus on clean energy, use of hydropower. So these are all decisions I would imagine which are multifaceted and also to minimize the risk to a business and not necessarily coming entirely from your sustainability officer. Having said that, in Atkins Spence, we have a sustainability committee in every single organization who works in an integrated manner to execute our sustainability policy. I don't know whether any of my fellow panelists like to add to that.
Okay. I think we have now skipped our time limit towards 5:35. I hope all of you enjoyed this session. We had some of the leading corporates giving their impressions on what they are doing in their organizations and views in general also. So that now we will, while thanking all the panelists for their inputs, I would like to now end the session. Thanking all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Now to hand over the token of appreciations. Now I invite Professor Lakshman R. Vatawala, President of CMA Sri Lanka, to hand over the token of appreciation for our session speakers. Mr. Prema Kure. Mr. Rohit Khosla. Mr. Subodh Dakwala. Dr. Hans Vijay Surya. Mr. Ronnie Piris. Mr. Rohan Fernando. Mr. Ravi Dias. Mr. Hiran Kure. Thank you, Professor. So with that, we conclude our SAFA CMA Management Accounting Summit 2012. And we are confident that you have received a comprehensive knowledge on sustainability and corporate responsibility from this summit. So thank you for your participation, and we invite you for tea. Thank you very much.